Well, folks, we have another season of Primal Screams. That's right, the second season of Daredevil Born Again has recently wrapped up, and it's actually one episode shorter this time around because, well, we'll get to that later. Now, as we all know, everyone loved Season 1 of this show. It wasn't controversial at all.
You serious?
Okay, yeah, Season 1 wasn't exactly the best, but I personally still stand by what I said last year. It may not be at the level that the Netflix show was, but it could have been way worse, folks. They really saved the show last minute with the post-overhaul team. However, I do admit that I may have been a little too forgiving with my review of Season 1. I was just very grateful that the show brought back the dark tone of the Netflix series, that I was willing to look past its flaws. And oh boy did it have flaws. I admit it's pretty terrible if you look at it as Season 4 because it doesn't work as a continuation, but I don't think it's a terrible show on its own because I do like the way the first season handled Matt and Fisk slowly getting back into their respective roles. And you have to have some sort of appreciation for the first season because without it, we wouldn't have gotten this awesome season. Season 1 walked so that Season 2 could run. Yeah, I loved Season 2. It gives fans what they wanted from Season 1, while at the same time giving us less of what we didn't like about Season 1. The first thing I liked was what they did with the new cast members introduced in Season 1 that were initially meant to replace Karen and Foggy. These being Cherry, Kristen, and Heather. They killed all of them. Nah, I'm just kidding. Because Matt is hiding out from Fisk's anti-vigilante task force, Kristen is used to fill in as the lawyer in the court cases. Heather is straight up a villain in this season as she backs Fisk with his crusade against vigilantes. And Cherry? He's practically written off the show. He has a heart attack at the end of the first episode, and then spends most of the season in the hospital, which to me is great because he was probably the worst character. We also get a lot more of Karen in this season, with her hiding out by Matt's side. So right off the bat, it tweaks the shit that people didn't like. I also loved the action scenes. Not only does it bring back those incredible fights that are meant to look like one continuous shot, but they also use different camera techniques when showcasing Daredevil's radar sense. Scenes like that help make Born Again stand out amongst other MCU shows. It also delivers the violence that we've come to expect from Daredevil. Bullseye in particular gets some really bloody scenes, particularly one in a diner that was great. Speaking of Bullseye, I absolutely loved Episode 5, The Grand Design, which is ironic considering Episode 5 was the worst episode of Season 1. This episode sees Matt actually try and save Bullseye from the task force, as it also cuts back to flashback scenes with Matt and Foggy set before the events of the Netflix show. Matt's memory of Foggy is able to convince him to give Bullseye mercy. Not only was it cool to see characters from the Netflix show such as James Wesley return, but the way these flashbacks are handled is absolutely perfect. The characters, the way Matt and Foggy talk to each other, the way it looks, the aspect ratio, it all perfectly resembles the feel of the Netflix show. It does still suck that Foggy was killed off, but the flashbacks in this episode almost feel like an apology for all the dumb shit that the pre-overhaul team did. Now, one new character from Season 1 who I did find compelling is Daniel Blake, who works for Fisk. You got the sense that even though he works for the main villain of the show, he himself isn't really a villain. And it seems his character was one of the things the pre-overhaul team did that carried over into what the new team wanted. I found Daniel to be one of the most interesting parts of this second season. He's just on the line of being a bad guy, but he also forms a connection with BB Urich, who's one of the people trying to expose Fisk. This makes him conflicted about what he should do, and it leads to him ultimately saving BB's life at the cost of his own. I loved his arc, and I think it's one of the biggest strengths of this season. And then of course you have the finale, which was absolutely stellar. Putting Fisk on the stand and Matt publicly revealing himself as Daredevil in order to incriminate Fisk is a beautiful ending. I don't feel it's as strong as the ending for Season 3, considering we've seen Matt and Fisk in similar situations like this, but I think they did the best they could. I also love Matt and Fisk communicating through his radar sense. Such a creative use of that power. The moment when Fisk starts beating the fuck out of the protesters was hilarious, but also made for such a jaw-dropping finale. Personally, I still think episode 5 is the best because this finale is held back by the fact that Matt ending up in prison was spoiled by Mike Coulter on Instagram. Like, seriously, why would you post that? So in general, I think they managed to make a really solid season, and it does fix pretty much all the problems of the previous season. Now, with that being said, I do want to go over my problems with this season. First, you have the Mr. Charles character, played by Matthew Lillard. I was expecting him to have a much bigger impact on the story, but he really only pops up every now and then, and talks about what he's doing with vigilantes. It's like he shows up to remind us that he exists. They'll probably do something with his character in the future, but as far as this season goes, he doesn't really do anything. And another character who doesn't do much is Jessica Jones, finally making her return. But she doesn't show up until the third to last episode. Now, I do like the concept of her powers not always working well, and I liked her introduction scene that shows her daughter while she's fighting the task force in the background. But again, similar to Mr. Charles, I was expecting her to have a bigger role. Speaking of which, I now want to go over what's probably my biggest problem with the whole Mayor Fisk arc across these two seasons. The lack of other vigilantes and characters who have had run-ins with Fisk. I know a lot of people have already complained about a certain wall crawler failing again to make an appearance, and I'll get to that in a bit, but it's not just him. The only vigilantes we see in this show other than Daredevil are Punisher, White Tiger, and Swordsman. That's it. Considering that Fisk's whole goal is to target vigilantes, you'd think we would see more of them. And what about characters who have had run-ins with Fisk, like Kate Bishop and Echo? I mean, I can maybe understand Kate Bishop not showing up because she's busy with the Young Avengers team, but it would have made more sense to at least get some sort of reaction from her about the whole situation, considering that her mom worked for Fisk at one point, and she had a fight with him. And then there's the character who I honestly thought we were gonna see at some point in this season. Echo. Maya is nowhere to be seen in this show. Fisk had a major impact on her life, and now he's mayor of New York. Again, you'd think we'd see some sort of reaction from Maya about the situation with Fisk, but we don't. We got one reference to Echo at the beginning of the first season, but that's it. I understand that the Echo show wasn't the most popular, but that doesn't mean her character should be ignored. She should have been a part of this season in some way. And then you have this web dickhead. What the fuck has his lazy ass been doing this whole time? Doom scrolling? Look, I'm well aware why Spider-Man doesn't make an appearance, and I don't necessarily blame Born Again specifically, but I do think Spider-Man not being involved is still a problem, especially since Fisk did mention him in the first season. They added that line knowing that Spider-Man can't make an appearance. That to me is a slap in the face. It's like they're teasing us with something that they know they can't give us. I've heard the argument that Spider-Man is too powerful compared to the other vigilantes, but that doesn't matter. He's still a vigilante, the type of person that Fisk is targeting. And again, I said it last year, but Kingpin is a major villain for Spider-Man, not just Daredevil. And some of you may say, well, Brand New Day will likely showcase what Spider-Man's been up to the past few years, and what he was doing during the events of Born Again. Yes, that's all fine and good, but that still doesn't fix my problem. The Mayor Fisk story is now over, which means even if Sony and Disney could make a deal to have Spider-Man appear in the TV shows, it's too little too late now. If a deal like that does happen, it's no longer going to be exciting because the damage has been done. Literally. We may never see Spider-Man meet Kingpin in the MCU, and it's all because of rights issues. That is just so disappointing. Now, of course, this doesn't ruin the show. Overall, this season was a massive improvement, and Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio continue to give phenomenal performances as these two characters. I'm going to give Daredevil Born Again Season 2 a 9 out of 10. Also, here's my ranking of all the seasons. But we also got another MCU project right after, and that is The Punisher: One Last Kill. This is the first Marvel Studios special presentation since 2022 with the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. This is why I waited to talk about Born Again until the Punisher special released, so that I could talk about both in one video. Now, they made a big deal about this special taking place after the events of Born Again Season 2, and it was released the week after the finale, which made me think this would tie into Born Again, but after watching it, it really doesn't even have anything to do with Born Again. You can watch this special without any prior knowledge of Born Again or the Punisher Netflix show. In fact, The Punisher One Last Kill essentially acts like a soft reboot for the MCU's Punisher. The Punisher Netflix show is pretty much made obsolete, which I honestly don't have a problem with. One Last Kill follows Frank Castle questioning himself on whether he needs to be the Punisher or not. He avenged his family, so he doesn't feel like he has any purpose now. He plans on killing himself, but then he runs into someone named Minucci, who wants revenge on Frank for killing her family, so Frank is forced back into his Punisher role. A very bloody action scene follows, and Frank decides he now has a new purpose: killing bad guys. Now overall, I really enjoyed this special. Very brutal fighting, and Jon Bernthal once again kills it as this character, pun intended. I don't think this special is the most impressive thing I've ever seen, but it serves its purpose, kinda like the title character. It does start off pretty slow, but once Minucci shows up, it gets a lot better. However, I have to point out a moment that was so distractingly bad that it was hilarious. There's a shot when Frank is thrown from a building, and when you see him land, he legitimately looks like a video game character. It's so perplexing to me that they thought no one would notice this. The CG looks fucking horrendous. I actually had to do a double take because I didn't believe it at first. So while this special is a lot more basic than I thought it would be, it works very well for a Punisher story. Punisher is a character who works better in small doses, and as a supporting character rather than in his own TV show. I will say that I liked this a lot more than the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special, but not quite as much as Werewolf by Night. I'm gonna give The Punisher One Last Kill a 7 out of 10. This might be one of the darkest MCU projects we've gotten, so it is a little bizarre that this is the same character who's going to be interacting with the fucking webhead in Brand New Day. So I guess my only concern is, I hope he's still going to feel like the same character, and that they won't water him down due to the PG-13 rating. Also, considering that this special didn't have any ties to Born Again, I think they should have released it closer to Brand New Day instead. End of June would have made more sense. But regardless, we're now 3 projects into 2026, and the MCU still hasn't had a stinker yet, which means there's even more pressure on Brand New Day now. So I guess the only thing left for me to say is, for the love of God, please let this movie be good.